Good evening and good morning. After lots of time zone calculations, I managed to catch Ethana Ivesa of Seat Headrest for a little chat about their latest album, The Scholars. Hi.
Hi there. Thanks for having me back.
Before we proceed to talking about the record, I would like to point out that you have been in Seat Headrest since 2015. It's been 10 years already. Would you like to tell us your story of how you joined the band and how does it feel to be in that band for 10 years already?
Yeah, it's been strange thinking about it. I was just reflecting on that this year that this is the 1 decade anniversary, and it doesn't feel like that long. I think because of COVID, the last 5 years kind of got really compressed. Um, and so the first 5 years felt like much longer. Because we were doing more. But the way that I got into the band was in 2015. I was going to a school called Bellevue College in kind of around Seattle, USA, or kind of outside of Seattle, and there was kind of a DIY music scene that was kind of attached to that school in some of the local DIY spaces, and I was doing solo acoustic sets around that time, around 2014, 2015, where I would just take an acoustic guitar and do some of my own songs. And I did a lot of covers and things. And one of the very first shows I ever did doing that solo act, uh, a very early version of Car Seat was on the same bill as me. And they had just moved to the West Coast, I think, like a few months earlier. So they were fresh on the West Coast. That I think this was also their first show. Um, since Will moved from Virginia, and we saw each other and we liked each other's sets. I think I did a Frank Sinatra song, which I think caught Will's attention because not a lot of other people were doing that type of material. And it was just a few days after that that I got an internet message asking me to start jamming with Will. And it was just a few weeks after that that I was asked to join the band full time. And then oddly enough, I joined as the guitar player, and then immediately after we lost our bassist, and so I ended up being demoted to bass for a while, or not demoted, but relocated to bass for about a year, and then once we really started touring full time, because right after I joined was when we got the record deal with Matador. It was like really boom boom boom. It was very quick. And so shortly after we started touring full time and we were on Matador, we got Seth, our current bass player, and I was able to go back to guitar. But that's kind of the short version of how I got inducted into the band.
And now you're doing much different stuff, I think, because you joined as a guitar player, then you played bass for a while, but now you were kind of put in charge of designing the sounds on the Scholars. Is that true? Is that entirely true? Maybe.
For most of the guitars, yeah. And yeah, it is kind of a shift because I did sort of join as, sort of second guitar. I think I was, had a little bit more of a tertiary spot when I first joined. But on Scholars, yeah, I mean, obviously everything was collaborative, and obviously I worked pretty closely with Will and with the other guys on all the guitars, but I had a lot more free reign to kind of direct the guitar sounds on each song. And especially with the structure of the album where it's very kind of short story focused. Like every song is kind of a vignette that stands on its own, and so it kind of gave me a fun opportunity to be a little bit of a chameleon and kind of try to select a slightly different sound for each song and try to determine what the best sound would be.
Yeah, I think The Scholars is your most sonically diverse album when it comes to Car Seat Headrest, but at the same time it sounds very cohesive. Did you have like a common point in your mind while making that record?
There's certain gear that I kind of go back to as kind of a baseline that I would deviate from, but I would always kind of have those points to come back to. So there's a pretty consistent like Telecaster sound throughout the album because that's kind of the guitar I've become most comfortable playing, and so that is kind of a textural through line I think through most of the songs is that most of them have that kind of sparkly Telecaster sound to them. But other than that, it was really I'm a big rock nerd. I like mentally cataloging different types of rock guitar and different textures and tones, and so mostly it was just seeing what direction I could get away with going in for each song, and kind of mentally going through my internal catalog of different types of guitar and going, oh well, can I try this one here, or can I try this one here, or and so that was really fun for me.
Oh yeah. Also, I think I can hear some 12 string on the album. Is that true?
Yeah, I always forget about that. There's actually I feel like I almost snuck a bunch of 12 string onto the record because most of the acoustic guitar parts were written for just a normal six string, but my six string was in a really bad condition for most of the times we were tracking, so I ended up just substituting the 12 string instead. But I thought it sounded really good. I was really happy with the way that it came into the album. But I've become a big kind of 12 string fan over the last few years.
Yeah, I think it gives a lot of depth to the sound. It's like more spacey, I guess. I really like it. So the early hack CD was attached to the deluxe versions of the album, and it gave me an idea to ask you that because it seems like some of the songs started out as jam sessions, and at the same time, I think it's getting more and more rare for modern bands to jam frequently. So how does it work for Car Seat Headrest?
Yeah, this is definitely the most jamming we had done on any record by a huge margin. Still, a lot of the songs started as an authored idea, but oftentimes, and every song was a little bit different, right? We kind of did a little bit of everything, but I would say the majority of the songs it would start with one of us would come up with kind of a kernel of an idea or maybe like a prompt, and it would be like, oh, I have this riff or this progression, and let's see what we can kind of um, draw around that. So we were very rarely starting with like a blank page, but often it was, to varying degrees, taking just like a little nugget of an idea or like an acorn of an idea, and then trying to fill it out as much as possible. And sometimes that was just like, yeah, just jamming and just seeing what adjacent parts we could come up with to this kind of initial starting point.
I will keep to the topic of jamming for a bit because I'm so curious. Do you jam for fun as Scarcit Headrest, and what do these jams look like? Because I think it's kind of interesting to see what it works like in different bands, and I think that while all of you in that band are incredibly technically skilled musicians with unique styles of playing, so that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. It's interesting. We I would say that we don't jam an awful lot just like recreationally. It tends to be pretty goal oriented or project oriented. So like we will jam, but it's usually we very rarely will just kind of like sit around and just, mess around. It's usually like a controlled experiment of, we have maybe an idea of something we want to flesh out, or we're trying to generate something in particular, and then the jamming will just be a stylistic, it'll just be a technique to get there. But I know a lot of other bands, every band kind of has their own language around that, and so I know a lot of other bands will jam kind of a lot more freeform, or a lot more not aimlessly, but a lot more kind of without an expectation of there being like a
Mm-hmm.
product. um I would say we're definitely closer to the end of, we value jamming and we like jamming, but it tends to be with kind of a guiding goal in mind.
During our last chat, you have told me that it's kind of a bigger thing with you on vocals in Car Seat Headrest, and then we got the Scholars, and on the Scholars you sing on Reality and Plant Desperation, and I think those vocals are kind of different from what we could hear on What's With You Lately, and your singing style on the new album has been compared to the likes of David Bowie, and I think that's kind of out there as there have been some references in the lyrics. But how do you feel about those comparisons? And do you think there might be some truth to it, or maybe not? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason maybe why that's in people's minds is like you said, because of some of the lyrical references and some of the kind of like album references and things like that. As far as uh I do think it's a little funny that for some folks the song Reality has kind of become understood as like a de facto like Bowie tribute, like we were kind of sitting down with the express intention of being like, oh, we're going to do a Bowie song now. And none of us were thinking that while we were working on it. It just sort of came out that way. I think that I, especially since What's With You Lately, or since Madlow, and since the last Toy Bastard record, I've started kind of trying to expand my vocal range a lot more, and I started singing a lot deeper, because I realized that I have kind of a deeper register that I never really knew was there. And I've also started singing in a metal band, and that has been also pushing me to try to use more of that boomier kind of register. And I think that just maybe the way that my voice is naturally, and the fact that I'm really influenced by David Bowie and I like David Bowie, like I think maybe that kind of schema of how to sing deep, comes out
Yeah.
when I'm singing. But no, yeah, reality was that was an old song. I had been kicking that around for about 4 or 5 years. And it originally it didn't sound like Bowie at all at the beginning. It was like a synth demo that I had written on like a I don't have a real mini Moog, but it was kind of like a mini Moog Model D type of synth sound that it was written on, and then it kind of over time it kind of got transformed into like a more 70s rock track.
Oh, let me get back to the early Hack CD because there was some demos on there, and I loved especially the Devereaux demo, that silly one, only with like MIDI instruments. I love that you have all put that on like a different CD because it gives a lot of perspective to the album. I think it gives a lot of context of how the songs came into being. I love that, and I was I was just ready to point that out. All right. So the next thing, you have recently spoken out about people like telling you that like the songs are too long. You know what I mean? That people have short attention spans, and like there is Planet Desperation that is just under 19 minutes and it's now the longest song in Seat Headrest discography. But I'd like to tell you, I texted you that, but I wanna tell that on air, that those song structures are actually one of the things that made me notice and appreciate the band in the first place. And listening to a 20-minute epic can be challenging, but I think it's very rewarding. And it's important, I think, that I think you have to challenge the listeners, you know? That's what I think. And as both you and Will have released some long compositions in the past, I would like to ask, how do you manage to keep that interesting?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm the same way where I think that I think it's healthy to be challenged. I think it's healthy to kind of stretch your boundaries with art and things like that as much as you can. And it never, when I was a teenager, I liked to be challenged. I always sought out the music that made me feel a little weird, because it felt interesting to me, and it felt like I was learning and growing, and I liked that feeling. Um, and but as far as like writing long songs for me, it never really felt like something I was doing super on purpose. It just sort of felt like a natural outgrowth of the type of music that I like to listen to, and just my general process. And I know Will's process, I think, also tends towards this, where the more, I think he and I are both very kind of conceptually minded, or maybe a little bit paratextually minded, where we really like all the, the song is the important thing, but I think we also both really like all the extra stuff, all of the little influences and reference points, and maybe things that we were reading or seeing, at the time that we were writing the song. Those things all kind of become important to the process. And I think when you think that way, and if that's the type of writing that you tend to do, that just kind of naturally leads towards longer material, because you know, each song becomes kind of a holder of like a lot of different ideas. And for me, sometimes it's like I feel like every song is something that can't happen again. And so I almost have this sort of fear that I'm like, well, I can only write this song one time. I want to make sure it has I want to make sure I use this opportunity for it to have all the ideas that it should have, or to hold as many things as it can. And maybe that's not always the way that you should write songs, because not every song should be 8 minutes long or 20 minutes long, but that's kind of my natural tendency is towards that type of thinking.
So it just happens. Did that element of surprise, I mean Andrew's verse as the Chanticleer, did it happen naturally, or was it like an idea that, yeah, we're gonna do like Andrew on low vocals, spook up?
Well, on on that song in particular, it was almost nothing about Planet Desperation was sort of premeditated. That song in particular, it came together, I think, last on the album, and it was mostly the product of like a lot of different ideas and a lot of different kind of song pieces that we had kind of in our pocket at the time, and we were kind of running out of time to finish all of them. And so Will had the idea of maybe, instead of just putting all these songs on a shelf, maybe if we tried to turn them into kind of a big smorgasbord of like kind of a medley. And I think that Chanticleer bit was just something, I don't even remember where that came from, but that was just something that was in the mix at the time.
Oh, I think it
And
was like a One Trade Danger song
that's
initially.
I think that's right. Yeah, I think you're right. It was something that either I don't remember if it had already existed on a one trade track, or if it was part of like an upcoming. I don't remember exactly what the state was,
It's
but
on
yeah.
the early hack CD.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's been so many different versions of these songs and so many different pieces that were flying around that I myself like can't remember where a lot of them came from. But yeah, it was just, it wasn't something that we really thought of beforehand. It just kind of was the spur of the moment, like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we just put that in there?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that even you, who worked on that album, can't really, recall all the fragments. Like, where do they come from? Because it shows how complex that thing is, and I love that. I think it is well thought out as well, because it's not like mashing some songs together. It's like. It's like a medley, but it makes sense, you know?
Yeah, it's a tricky balance because part of the fun of a medley is kind of the vignette nature of it, where like you do kind of want there to be these big jumps, because it makes you feel like you're traveling to a lot of different places, but at the same time, the jumps can't be so big that you feel like you don't really know what you're listening to anymore. I kind of think of it as like the movie Inland Empire, where that song or that movie is really long and it's very disjointed, and like it's kind of just a big, almost like a music video of just a bunch of different ideas. And it's like that's an example of a work where, and I think where they made it work, where there are a lot of ideas that are superficially really disconnected and don't have a lot to do with each other, but because there's just enough of an emotional through line that connects all of them, there's just enough of that connective tissue to make it kind of hold together, I think. And so that's kind of the balance we were hoping for on Planet Desperation.
There's also been some voices on the internet that Planet Desperation should have been a medley to the likes of the second part of Abbey Road. Have you ever tried making such a thing on an album, even with Planet Desperation? But I'm just curious if you have thought about that.
Of like, it's been a while since I've listened to Abbey Road, but like taking songs that were already on the record and kind of medleying them, or
Like the other way around, like splitting up like a song Planet Desperation to the parts of that song and putting them
oh, okay,
as
okay.
different tracks. I'm just curious because like it's your vision and all, but yeah, I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, I totally get you. Yeah, I mean, we never really thought about it. I think that there are a lot of breakpoints where you could pretty easily do that. For us, it didn't seem that important. It was like if the ideas were all there, we weren't really that concerned about the way that it was broken up on the CD. I mean, obviously, it would make it easier to kind of hop around, but what we were thinking of it more as like,
It's a
what would
story,
this
yeah.
be like as a continuous thing? What would it feel like to kind of jump from A to B to C to D all kind of in one go? But I have also heard people saying that, yeah, they would have preferred it as a series of, but then I think maybe they would have felt even more disconnected maybe if they were separate tracks.
Yeah, it's possible. I think it tells a story, so that's important. Uh, and the story, and it's the another part of our chat. I broke it up into like some modules, and that was the sound module. So now it's time for the story and aesthetics. But first, we have talked about Toy Bastards, the war before, and after listening to the scholars, I feel like there's some common points as well. And we have talked about that. And you already confirmed that both albums were being produced at the similar time. Thus, your notes were sort of cross-contaminated, as you said on the Reddit AMA session. However, there's another project you're currently involved in, and it's Kovgot, a doom metal band. Did this one have any influence on the scholars?
No, Scholars was pretty much wrapped up by the time I started doing Cough God, although I had been kind of putting together material for it kind of around the time that we were around the time that Scholars was fully written but not fully recorded. I was kind of just in my spare time I was putting together material for Cough God. And it was kind of a fun release because it was material that wasn't quite as hard to write. It had a little bit more of a stylistic template to it where it was like, okay, I'm going to play some really cool riffs and use a fuzz pedal and kind of not worry about reinventing the wheel quite so much. And also because it was material that was maybe emotionally a little bit more distanced from me, it felt like more low stakes to write. And so I've found that writing after finishing the war and also finishing work on Scholars, I found that writing, you know, Black Sabbathy wizard music was kind of a nice vacation. Not that it's music that doesn't matter to me, but it's has a different enough approach where I don't feel as stressed while I'm writing it.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for Kovgot, by the way, and I'm really stoked to hear it. But let's go to the other question, and let's get back to a few months ago when the Getsemani web quest was revealed, because I love the idea, and I'm really proud to have cracked the mystery myself. And I heard it
Oh,
was Chris Lombardi's idea to reveal the song in parts, and Will has crafted the riddles. It was hard. It was hard. I think it was hard. And have you learned the answers in advance, or did you manage to have a shot at trying to solve them?
no, I actually I was sort of part of some of the conversations as far as like the form that the webquest would take and some of the idea brainstorming for it, but I wasn't really that involved in the creating the answers. And then we were so busy by the time it actually went live, I wasn't even thinking about trying to solve them
All
myself,
right.
especially because I'm very terrible at math, and so I knew there were some answers that would have been completely above my level.
Oh, that was the hardest one, I think. Like, is Will a math enthusiast, maybe?
Not as far as I know. I'm sure he's better at it than me, but I actually don't know if he's a math guy or not. I know Andrew is more of a math guy.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I loved the riddles. It was great, and a lot of fun, and like it was really rewarding because you could hear another part of the song after solving each mystery. Okay,
Yeah, it was fun to hear people kind of react to the song in little bite-sized pieces and be like and sometimes they'd be like, "Oh, I really liked this part, but I really didn't like this part. But then the next part was good, but I really didn't like this other part." And so it was almost like they were reacting to different songs, but it was all just one song.
So, on the scholars, there's a lot of themes connected to generational conflict and fulfilling the expectations of your ancestors. And the voice message at the end of True False Lover convinces me that it's the spirit of the story. However, I think there's much more to it, though. So, I'd like to ask you if you could tell me some interpretations you have heard from the fans, and what do you think about those?
Yeah, I honestly, most of the interpreting I've heard has been very kind of lore specific, more than thematic. It's more about like, you know, who is this character and where did they end up and where do they come into the story and how do they interact with these other characters I think most of the discourse I've seen has been people more trying to figure out the nitty gritty of like some kind of a sequence of events, which is funny because most of that wasn't really what we were thinking about, or at least like that information is sort of there, but day to day we weren't really thinking about that much in the studio. Um, but definitely, I've seen a lot of people pick up on the kind of you know there's definitely there are threads of like a queer narrative in there. Some people have interpreted kind of a trans narrative. There's definitely a generational divide, kind of institutional conflict. Like a lot of those things are there and have been. I've seen people pick up on them, and so that's been kind of gratifying to see. Although I will say for my part in the lyrics, I kind of have to think of thematic stuff after the fact. When I'm actually in the process of writing lyrics, I feel like I kind of have my head down inside of it, and so I often don't think about those things until afterwards. It's like I'll write a bunch of lyrics, and then it's kind of not till they're finished that I can kind of look at them and decide like what they meant.
Let's talk about the aesthetics. The album art was made by the band's longtime collaborator Kate Woods, and I think it corresponds well with the story, as the art is a mix of old school academic themes and some more contemporary elements. We can see a computer on the page for the last song. So, did the band influence the character designs and the general vibe of the art?
No, I think most of that was Kate. I mean, Will was the person that had kind of the most communication with Kate. But you know, I think mostly the ball was kind of in. I think there was like the theme obviously was communicated, and I think there was some talk about a lot of the threads of the album as far as like what it represented and kind of the structural outline of it. But other than that, I think as far as I know, I think the ball was mostly in Kate's court to kind of determine how that would actually manifest visually. But I think the most important thing was just that it had a really cohesive, uh, that all aspects of the release would kind of have this like unified kind of aesthetic to it, but also that it would be, like you said, a little bit playfully kind of anachronistic, where the setting would be kind of in an indeterminate time period, where it would kind of have these kind of archaic reference points or vibes of like Canterbury Tales or things like that. But then within the setting, you would also have kind of more modern things kind of appear and put it in kind of a timeless kind of period.
Yeah, the mix of techniques I think is really important here because there are drawings, of course, but also photography. And as a photographer, I love that. Even though like most of it is drawings of the characters and their whereabouts. There's also some photos that like show that the characters are like little creatures, and I love that.
Yeah.
Very small. The lore thing you have mentioned the lore thing, and the Scholars is actually the first Seat Headrest record with some general lore. Do you think you could expand that universe in the future, or like the next album is going to be something entirely different?
We haven't really talked about it that much. I know a couple folks have asked us if we plan to do kind of an adaptation of, some folks have been curious about like would this album ever be translated into another format, or would the story aspects ever be would we ever bring it to the stage or something like that? Which that seems like an insanely that as an undertaking, that seems like it would be insane to me. That would be like such a such a huge undertaking to try to like not because not because it's not doable, but just like I've never done anything like that before. That seems like it would be difficult to do. But we haven't really talked about what we would do next. I would assume at a guess that it would probably be something different, or at the very least, even if it was another kind of conceptual work or another kind of narrative driven work, it would probably be about something else or concerning different people. But I don't know. It's I mean it's something that we've been asked a couple times now of if these characters or if this setting would ever kind of get reused anywhere else. But I guess we'll have to see what happens.
There were some serious questions, but like I need to ask you one silly question. And like, do you have like a spirit animal that is a character from the scholars?
No, I've never really thought about it. I mean, of the characters that I sing, um, you know, and I haven't even like I only just got the vinyl like a couple days ago, so I haven't even fully familiarized myself with like who everyone is visually because I wasn't seeing the visuals for most of the time that we were making the album until after it was finished. But I know that there's the characters that I sing have obviously they have an animal representation. It would probably be one of those. I think one of them is like a hedgehog.
Oh yeah, I think so. Yeah. I'm just like looking at the pages of the booklet because I took it from my room. I think it was hyacinth.
I think that's correct. I mean,
Yeah.
I could be down with that. I was really big into the Sonic games when I was a kid.
Yeah, as well, he was the one that dies in Plant Desperation, according to
That's
the
right. That's right.
libretto.
Yeah, the one
Yeah,
that gets poisoned.
yeah, yeah. I love the story because it's like, it shows it's like an ensemble cast, as you have said in like some descriptions for the album. And I love that it's like so versatile and it just touches a lot of different topics, but at the same time we have like a narrative about I think it's a band, CCF, like. Oh, so we can finally confirm this. Is CCF a band in the Scholars universe?
No, I think CCF stands for Cartoon Fridays,
Yeah,
which was
it
like a
does.
was like
Yeah,
a yeah, that was like a programming block. But as far as I know, I mean, I guess I'd have to confirm this with Will because this was his idea. But I don't think that's the name of the band,
all
but
right.
I actually could be wrong.
I would love to learn the actual name for the band as on the first page of the booklet for CCF, of course. There is Beolko with a typewriter, and over his bed there is like a CCF neon, and then the picture of the band. So that's what
Oh,
fans
okay,
were
okay.
thinking. Yeah, I would love to confirm that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that information does exist, so it's there to be uncovered somewhere.
All right. I think it's like about it when it comes to the themes and story questions. I have one more question for you, and it's about playing live. Because recently you have started touring with Seat Headrest, and by the time we're talking, you have played one show already. And the shows are spaced out in time, as Will has wanted to see if he's able to get back into that while staying cautious about his health, and wishes for good health to Will from me right now. I feel like those shows could feel more special as they are not a routine of sorts, and playing shows less frequently could introduce a different point of view. Do you feel like this model of touring benefits the band?
That's how we feel right now. It's still kind of in a trial run kind of phase where, we've never really um booked shows in this way before. So we're kind of we're cautiously optimistic about it, but we're kind of seeing how it pans out as far as if this type of scheduling is the best thing for us or not. It certainly seems like the best thing for Will's health right now, and so we're kind of testing the waters and seeing, if this works, then maybe we might do something more dense in the future, closer to maybe what we had done in the past. But thus far, I mean, and again, we've only done the one show so far, but thus far, it seems like a good model, at least for us, as far as being able to spend more time at home, and having more prep time between shows. But yeah, we'll kind of see as the year goes on how this model turns out for us.
Yeah, I hope it goes well. I think it's easier to do in your own country, but it's not as simple as it could be for you when on other continents. And
Oh, definitely.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm really praying that Seat Headrest could come back to Europe one day. I know that's like a long way in front of us, but like, yeah, I'm really waiting for that, and I will wait as long as it needs to.
We really want to, and there's a lot of other places that we have really wanted to either return to or visit for the first time. There's definitely a lot of people in Brazil that have been very vocal about. I mean, that's also almost kind of a meme at this
Yeah,
point,
come to
but a lot
Brazil.
of people
Yeah,
have really been. It seems like we have a lot of people there that really like us. So we've also and obviously it's beautiful there. So we've definitely wanted to go there. But yeah, we're hoping that if this year goes well, that might, you know, open up more options of things that we might be able to do in the coming years.
I'm rooting for that. And I think that's about that. I'm really happy to be able to talk to you, and I wish you good health. I wish you all good health because it's, important and lets you do what you love the most, the music. But yeah, thank you, Ethan, for chatting with me. Thank you for your time, and I hope you have a nice day.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for having me back. I love talking to you guys and I love your radio station and you guys have always been very very nice to me and have always asked really thoughtful questions and things like that. So I always appreciate coming on here. Thanks.